The sky above the alien world of Valora shimmered with strange colors. 2 moons hung low, casting pale light over a land that seemed untouched by time. The ground was covered in glowing crystals, their soft hum filling the air like a song from another world. For centuries, the Valorans had lived here in peace, believing they were alone in the universe. But tonight, everything changed. On the edge of a rocky plateau stood Kellis, a young Valoran with skin that shimmered like liquid silver under the moonlight. His large, almond-shaped eyes scanned the horizon, where something massive and unfamiliar loomed in the sky. It was a fleet, dozens of sleek, metallic ships that glowed faintly as they hovered silently above the planet's surface. Kalis felt his heart race. He had heard stories of humans, creatures said to be myths, but now he wasn't so sure. Behind him, a group of other Valorans gathered, their whispers growing louder with each passing moment. Some clutched weapons made of energy and light, while others held ancient artifacts passed down through generations. One of these artifacts, a small stone carving shaped like a human figure, rested in Kalis's hand. It was rough and worn, its features barely visible after centuries of handling. To the Valorans, it had always been proof of a legend, a tale of beings who once walked among the stars. "They're real," whispered Nera, an elder with glowing blue patterns running across her arms. Her voice trembled as she pointed to the ships. The myths, they were true. Kalis tightened his grip on the artifact. He wanted to believe her words, but fear crept into his mind. What did these humans want? Were they friends or foes? The ships did not move, yet their presence alone felt heavy, like a storm waiting to break. As the group stood frozen, one of the larger ships descended slowly, its engines humming softly. A beam of light shot down from its belly, illuminating the plateau. Dust swirled around them, stinging their eyes and making it hard to see. Kalis shielded his face with one arm, clutching the artifact tightly with the other. When the dust settled, a figure appeared at the center of the light. The beam wore a suit that gleamed like polished metal, covering every inch of its body except for its face. Through the transparent visor of the helmet, Kalis could see a pair of sharp, intelligent eyes staring back at him. The human looked different from the carvings, heavier, more solid, but there was no mistaking what it was. This was no myth. This was real. For a moment, no one moved. The silence stretched thin, broken only by the faint hum of the crystals around them. Then the human raised a hand, palm open, as if trying to show it meant no harm. Kalis hesitated. Should he step forward or retreat? The weight of the artifact in his hand reminded him of the legends, of the stories his people had told for generations. If humans truly existed, then perhaps this meeting was destined. Nera stepped forward first, her glowing patterns flickering nervously. She held out an empty hand, mirroring the gesture of the human. The tension in the air shifted slightly, though uncertainty still lingered. Whatever happened next, Kalis knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The human stood motionless, its hand still raised in a gesture of peace. Nera took another cautious step forward, her glowing patterns pulsing brighter with each movement. The rest of the Valorans watched in silence, their eyes fixed on the stranger from the stars. Kalis felt his chest tighten as he realized the weight of this moment. It was the first time their kind had met these so-called humans face to face. Nera stopped just a few paces away from the human. She tilted her head slightly, studying the figure before her. Its suit looked strange but functional, covered in small lights and markings that seemed to shift faintly. The human's helmet reflected the glow of the twin moons, making it hard to see much beyond those sharp, watchful eyes. Slowly, the human lowered its hand and pointed toward the artifact in Kalis's grip. Kalis froze. His fingers tightened around the stone carving, as if it might slip away at any moment. He glanced at Nera, unsure what to do. The elder gave him a small nod, encouraging him to step forward. Taking a deep breath, Kalis moved closer until he stood beside Nera. He held the artifact out hesitantly, keeping his arms stiff and ready to pull back if needed. The human leaned forward slightly, examining the carving. Then, to everyone's surprise, it reached up and tapped a button on its helmet. With a soft hiss, the visor retracted, revealing a face unlike anything the Valorans had ever seen. The human skin was pale and smooth, its features angular and unfamiliar. It had no glowing patterns or shimmering skin, just plain, unadorned flesh. Yet there was something about its expression that felt calm. "Human," the being said, its voice muffled but clear through a hidden speaker in its suit. The word echoed softly across the plateau, causing murmurs to ripple through the group behind Kalis. Nira tilted her head again, mimicking the human's earlier movement. "You speak?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Her words came out in a musical tone, flowing like water over stones. To the Valoran's amazement, the human nodded. "Yes," it replied. "We come, in peace." Kalis blinked, trying to process what was happening. This creature, this human, was speaking their language. How was that possible? Had they been watching Valora for years? Decades? Centuries? Questions swirled in his mind, but he forced himself to stay focused. For now, all that mattered was understanding why they were here. The human gestured toward the artifact in Kalis's hand, then pointed to itself. "This is us," it said slowly, enunciating each word carefully. Kalis stared at the carving, then back at the human. The resemblance was undeniable. These beings truly were the ones from the legends. Nira stepped closer, her glowing patterns dimming as she tried to appear less threatening. "Why have you come?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. The human paused, as if choosing its words carefully. "To learn," it finally said. "And to share." Kalis frowned. Share what? What could humans possibly offer them? And what did they want in return? Before he could ask, the human turned and waved toward its ship. A second figure emerged from the light, carrying a small device that glowed faintly. It placed the object gently on the ground between them and stepped back. The first human pointed to the device. "Gift," it said simply. Nara hesitated, then knelt down to examine the object. It was smooth and metallic, with tiny lights blinking rhythmically. She touched it cautiously, and the lights flared briefly before dimming again. Whatever it was, it didn't seem dangerous. Still, Kalis couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. As the group began to gather around the mysterious gift, Kalis glanced back at the fleet hovering above. There was something unsettling about their presence, even if the humans claimed to mean no harm. What secrets did they carry? And what would happen when those secrets came to light? The small metallic device lay on the ground, its blinking lights casting faint reflections on the rocky surface. The Valorans gathered around it cautiously, their glowing patterns flickering with a mix of curiosity and unease. Nira ran her fingers over the smooth surface again, her movements slow and deliberate. She looked up at the human who had called it the gift and tilted her head. "What does it do?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with suspicion. The human crouched down beside her, pointing to the device. "It helps," it said, pausing as if searching for the right words. "To grow. Life." Kalis frowned. Life? What kind of life? He glanced at the barren landscape around them, dotted only by the glowing crystals and jagged rocks. There was no sign of plants or animals, just emptiness. If this device could truly bring life to their world, it would be a miracle. But miracles always came with a price. Nira exchanged a glance with Kalis before turning back to the human. "Why give us this?" she asked. Her tone was calm, but there was an edge to her question that made the air feel heavier. The human stood up straight, its helmet still retracted to reveal its face. It gestured toward the sky, where the fleet of ships hovered silently. "We travel far," it said. "Find new worlds. Share knowledge. Build bridges." "Bridges?" Kalis repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. He stepped forward, his shimmering skin catching the dim light of the twin moons. What kind of bridges? Between who? The human pointed to itself, then to the group of Valorans. Between us, it said simply. Kalis felt a chill run through him. The idea of connecting with these strangers was both exciting and terrifying. For centuries, the Valorans had believed humans were nothing more than myths. Stories told to explain the ancient carvings and artifacts scattered across their world. Now, here they were, standing face to face with beings who claimed to want peace and cooperation. But how could they trust them? One of the other Valorans, a younger male named Tarek, stepped closer to the device. His glowing patterns flared brightly, betraying his nervousness. "How do we know this isn't a trick?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "What if it hurts us instead of helping?" The human raised both hands, palms open in a gesture of reassurance. "No harm," it said firmly. "Test it. See." Tarek hesitated, glancing at Nira for guidance. The elder nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "Very well," she said. "But we will test it together. No one touches it alone." The group formed a loose circle around the device, their glowing patterns creating a mosaic of light against the darkened plateau. One by one, they reached out to touch it, their fingers brushing against its cool surface. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hum, the device began to glow brighter. Tiny beams of light shot outward, forming intricate patterns on the ground. Where the light touched, the rocky soil began to shift and change. Kalis watched in awe as green shoots emerged from the ground, growing rapidly into tall, leafy plants. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, vibrant and alive, swaying gently even though there was no wind. The air seemed fresher, carrying a sweet scent that made him take a deep breath. "It works," Nira murmured, her voice filled with wonder. She knelt down to examine the plants more closely, her glowing patterns dimming as she focused. This is incredible." The human stood quietly, watching their reactions. Its expression was unreadable, but there was a sense of satisfaction in the way it held itself. Kalis couldn't help but wonder what else these humans could do, and what they expected in return. As the Valorans marveled at the transformation, Kalis turned his attention back to the fleet above. Something about those ships still unsettled him. Were they truly here to help, or was this just the beginning of something far more complicated? The plateau was now alive with color. The plants continued to grow, spreading outward in a lush carpet of green that contrasted sharply with the barren rocks they had replaced. The Valorans stood in silence, their glowing patterns flickering softly as they took in the sight. For centuries, their world had been harsh and unforgiving, a place where survival came before beauty. Now, for the first time, there was hope. But Kalis couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at him. He glanced at the human, who still watched them silently. Its face revealed little, but its eyes seemed to hold secrets, questions left unspoken. What did these humans truly want? And why had they come now, after so many years? Nira stepped forward, breaking the quiet. "This gift," she said, gesturing toward the thriving plants, "it changes everything. But we must know more. Why do you share this with us?" The human tilted its head slightly, as if considering her words. Then it pointed to the sky, where the fleet of ships hovered like silent sentinels. "We seek allies," it said slowly. "Friends among the stars." Kalis frowned. Allies? His mind raced with possibilities. Did the humans need help? Were they running from something or someone? Or were they simply looking to expand their reach, claiming new worlds under the guise of friendship? Tarek spoke up, his voice cutting through the tension. "And what do you ask in return?" he demanded, his glowing patterns flaring brighter. "Nothing is free." The human hesitated, then placed a hand over its chest. "Knowledge," it said finally. "Stories. To learn about your world and your people." Kalis exchanged a glance with Nira. That didn't sound too bad, at least not on the surface. But he knew better than to trust appearances. Humans might look different, but they were clearly intelligent and resourceful. Sharing knowledge could mean sharing vulnerabilities. What would happen if the humans discovered too much? Nira nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "Very well," she said. "We will share what we can, but we must take care. Trust is earned, not given freely." The human bowed its head slightly, as if acknowledging her caution. Then it turned back toward its ship, signaling for the second figure to join it. Together, they picked up the device and began walking away, leaving the Valorans alone with their new plants and unanswered questions. As the humans disappeared into the light of their ship, Callus felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him. Hope, fear, curiosity. They all battled for dominance. He looked down at the artifact still clutched in his hand. It had once been a symbol of myth, a relic of stories told around campfires. Now it felt heavier, as if it carried the weight of an entire future. "What do we do now?" Tarek asked, his voice quieter, but still edged with suspicion. Nira turned to face the group, her glowing patterns steady and calm. "We watch," she said firmly, "and we learn. These humans have given us a gift, but gifts often come with strings attached. We must be careful." Callus nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He stared at the fleet above, wondering what secrets lay hidden within those ships. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. The arrival of the humans had changed everything. Their myths were no longer just stories. They were real. And reality, Callus realized, was far more complicated than legend. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Callus made a silent promise. He would protect his people, no matter what the cost, because while the humans had brought life to their world, they had also brought uncertainty, and uncertainty was a seed that could grow into danger. The suns rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the plateau. The new plants swayed gently, their leaves shimmering with dew that sparkled like tiny jewels. It was a sight no Valoran had ever imagined, life blooming where none had existed before. Yet despite the beauty around them, the group remained uneasy. The humans' departure left behind more questions than answers. Callus sat cross-legged on the ground, the artifact resting in his lap. He traced its worn edges with his fingers, thinking about the stories his elders used to tell. Humans were once myths, beings of legend who traveled among the stars. Now they were real, and their arrival felt both miraculous and dangerous. Callus couldn't decide whether to feel grateful or afraid. Nira stood nearby, her glowing patterns dim but steady. She watched the horizon where the human ships still hovered, unmoving. Her expression was calm, but her eyes betrayed her thoughts. "They will return," she said softly, breaking the silence. "This is only the beginning." Tarek paced back and forth, his movements sharp and restless. His glowing patterns flared brightly every few steps, a sign of his frustration. "We can't just sit here and wait." He snapped. "What if they come back with more machines? More changes? We need to prepare." "For what?" Callus asked, looking up at him. "We don't even know what they want yet. They gave us this." He gestured toward the plants. "And asked for knowledge in return. That doesn't sound like an attack." "But it doesn't sound harmless either," Tarek shot back. "Why would they care about our stories? About us? There's always a reason." Nira stepped between them, raising a hand to quiet the argument. "Both of you are right," she said firmly. "We cannot ignore the humans, but we also cannot rush into decisions. For now, we watch and learn. If they return, we must be ready, not just to defend ourselves, but to understand them." Callus nodded slowly, though doubt lingered in his mind. Understanding the humans seemed impossible when they already knew so little about them. What secrets did those ships hold? What other gifts might they bring? And most importantly, what would they take in return? As the day wore on, the group began to explore the area around the plateau. The plants had spread further than anyone expected, covering patches of barren ground with vibrant greenery. Small creatures, brightly colored insects with delicate wings, had already begun to appear, drawn to the new life. It was as if the entire ecosystem was awakening, piece by piece. Kalis knelt beside one of the plants, running his fingers over its smooth leaves. It felt warm, almost alive in a way that went beyond simple growth. He wondered if this was how the humans saw all worlds, as places to shape and change according to their will. If so, what did that mean for Velora? Would their world become something unrecognizable? Nira joined him, crouching down to examine the plant. "This is powerful," she said quietly. "Too powerful, perhaps. Life is precious, but it can also be dangerous if not respected." Kalis looked at her, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. "Do you think they'll keep giving us things like this?" he asked. "Or is this just the start?" Nira sighed, her glowing patterns flickering faintly. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I do know this. Whatever happens next, we must stay united. If we let fear divide us, we'll lose everything. Our trust, our people, maybe even our world." As the suns dipped lower in the sky, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink, Kalis turned his gaze back to the fleet above. The ships were silent, patient, watching, waiting. Whatever came next, he knew, would test them all in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Night fell over the plateau, and the twin moons bathed the land in their pale glow. The plants shimmered faintly under the light, their leaves rustling softly, as if whispering secrets to the wind. Kalis sat alone near the edge of the plateau, staring up at the fleet of human ships still hovering silently in the sky. His mind was a storm of questions, each one more troubling than the last. What did the humans truly want? And how far were they willing to go to get it? Behind him, the rest of the group had gathered around a small fire. They spoke in low voices, discussing what they had seen and felt during the encounter. Nira led the conversation, her calm tone guiding the others through their fears and uncertainties. But even she couldn't hide the flicker of doubt in her glowing patterns. Kalis turned his attention back to the artifact in his hands. It felt heavier now, as if the weight of their choices rested on it. He thought about the stories his elders used to tell, the legends of humans traveling among the stars, bringing both wonder and destruction. Was that what was happening here? Were the humans saviors or conquerors? A soft sound drew his attention. Nira approached, her steps quiet against the rocky ground. She sat beside him, her glowing patterns dimming slightly as she followed his gaze toward the fleet. "You're troubled," she said simply. Kalis nodded. "I keep thinking about what Tarek said earlier, about how nothing is free. What if this gift, these plants, are just the start? What if they expect something bigger from us?" Nira sighed, her eyes reflecting the light of the moons. "It's possible," she admitted, "but we can't let fear guide our actions. We must be smart, careful. If we push them away too quickly, we might lose a chance to learn. If we trust them too much, we risk losing ourselves." Kalis frowned. "How do we know when to stop trusting?" Nira didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and touched one of the nearby plants. Its leaves curled gently at her touch, as if responding to her presence. "We'll know," she said finally, "when the balance shifts, when their gifts start taking more than they give. We'll feel it. And when that happens, we'll have to decide what kind of future we want for Velora." Her words stayed with Kalis as he looked back at the fleet. The ships glowed faintly, their lights blinking in patterns that seemed almost alive. He wondered what the humans were doing inside those machines. Were they watching the Velorans, planning their next move, or simply waiting for the right moment to act? The fire behind them crackled softly, breaking the silence. Tarek's voice carried over the plateau, sharp and urgent. "What if they come back tonight? Shouldn't we be ready?" Nira stood, her glowing patterns brightening as she turned to face the group. "We are ready," she said firmly. "But readiness doesn't mean rushing into danger. It means staying alert, staying together. If they return, we'll meet them, not with fear, but with strength. Kalis rose to his feet, clutching the artifact tightly. He knew Nara was right. Fear wouldn't protect them. Unity would. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that the humans' arrival marked the beginning of something vast and irreversible. As the night grew colder, the group settled in around the fire, their glowing patterns creating a warm, protective circle. Kalis stayed close to the edge, his eyes fixed on the fleet above. Whatever happened next, he vowed to stay vigilant, for his people, for his world, and for the fragile balance between hope and caution. And so, under the watchful gaze of the twin moons, the Valorans waited, silent, watchful, ready. The night stretched on, endless and heavy with anticipation. The plateau was quiet except for the soft hum of the glowing plants and the occasional rustle of wings from the strange insects that had begun to appear. Kalis sat near the edge, his eyes fixed on the fleet above. The ships hadn't moved since their arrival, but their presence felt like a weight pressing down on him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Nira walked among the group, checking on each person quietly. Her glowing patterns pulsed softly, a calming rhythm that seemed to ease the tension in the air. When she reached Kalis, she placed a hand on his shoulder. "You should rest," she said gently. "We all need to be strong tomorrow." Kalis shook his head. "I can't," he replied. "Not while they're still out there. What if they come back tonight?" "They won't," Nira said firmly. "They've given us time to think, to decide what we want. That's what this is. A test, to see how we react." "A test?" Kalis frowned. "Why would they need to test us? They're the ones who came here." Nira sighed, sitting down beside him. "Because trust goes both ways," she explained. "If they truly want allies, they need to know we're worth trusting too. But that doesn't mean we lower our guard." Kalis nodded slowly, though his mind raced with possibilities. If the humans were testing them, what would happen if they failed? Would the fleet leave, or would it bring something worse? He glanced at the artifact in his hands, its rough surface cool against his skin. It had once been a symbol of myth, but now it felt like a warning, a reminder of how much was at stake. In the distance, a faint noise broke the silence. It was low and mechanical, like the whirring of gears. Kalis froze, his heart pounding. The others heard it too. Their glowing patterns flared brightly as they scrambled to their feet. Tarek grabbed his energy rifle, pointing it toward the sky. "Stay calm," Nira urged, stepping forward. Her voice was steady, but her glowing patterns betrayed her unease. "Let's see what they want before we act." A single beam of light shot down from one of the ships, illuminating a patch of ground not far from where the group stood. Dust swirled in the air as another human figure emerged, this time carrying a small, glowing box. It moved slowly, deliberately, stopping just outside the circle of light. The human raised a hand, palm open, mimicking the gesture of peace from earlier. Then it spoke, its voice distorted but clear through a speaker in its suit. "No harm," it said. "We bring more gifts." Kalis exchanged a glance with Nira. Gifts again. What did the humans hope to gain by giving so much? Tarek stepped forward, his weapon still raised. "What do you want from us?" he demanded, his voice sharp. The human tilted its head, as if considering the question. Then it pointed to the glowing box in its hands. "To help," it said simply. "To grow." Nara held up a hand, signaling Tarek to lower his weapon. She approached the human cautiously, her glowing patterns dimming slightly. "Why do you keep helping us?" she asked. "What do you gain?" The human hesitated, then gestured toward the fleet above. "Allies," it said. "Friends. Together. Stronger." Kalis watched silently, his chest tight with conflicting emotions. The human's words sounded sincere, but sincerity didn't always mean safety. Every gift they gave could be a step closer to dependence or control. Nara took the glowing box from the human. studying it carefully. Its surface was smooth and warm to the touch, with tiny lights blinking rhythmically. "We'll look at this," she said, "but no more surprises. If you want trust, you must earn it." The human nodded, then turned and walked back into the light. Moments later, the beam disappeared, leaving the plateau dark once more. As the group gathered around Nira, examining the new device, Kellis stayed where he was, staring at the fleet above. Whatever the humans wanted, one thing was certain. Nothing about their arrival was simple, and as the first hints of dawn began to break over the horizon, Kellis realized the hardest choices were yet to come. The first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. The glowing plants on the plateau shimmered in the new light, their leaves sparkling like tiny jewels. But despite the beauty around them, the Valorans couldn't shake the tension that lingered in the air. The humans had come again, bringing another gift, and more questions. Naira held the glowing box carefully, her glowing patterns flickering faintly as she examined it. The others gathered around her, their eyes wide with curiosity and unease. Kalis stood slightly apart, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He watched the group silently, his mind racing. What was inside the box? And why did the humans keep giving them things without asking for anything in return? Tarek broke the silence, his voice sharp and impatient. "We can't just keep taking their gifts," he said. "Every time they give us something, they're tying us to them. What happens when we can't say no anymore?" Nara looked up at him, her expression calm but firm. "We don't have to decide right now," she said, "but we do need to understand what this is." She turned the box over in her hands, studying its smooth surface. There were no buttons or markings, just a faint hum that seemed to vibrate through her fingers. Kalis stepped forward, his curiosity outweighing his caution. "Open it," he said quietly. "If we want to know what they're doing, we need to see what's inside." Nara hesitated, then nodded. She pressed her palm against the top of the box, and with a soft click, it opened. A warm, golden light spilled out, bathing the group in its glow. Inside the box was a small orb, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. It floated above the box, hovering in midair as if alive. The Valorans stared at it, their glowing patterns flickering in unison. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Tarek stepped back, his weapon raised. "What is that thing?" he demanded, his voice tense. Nira reached out cautiously, her fingers brushing the orb. It didn't react, simply continuing its steady pulse. "It feels safe," she said slowly, "but I don't know what it does." Kalis frowned, stepping closer. "Maybe it's another gift to help us," he suggested, "like the plants. Or maybe it's something else," Tarek snapped. "Something to control us, to watch us." Nira shook her head, though her glowing patterns betrayed her uncertainty. "We won't know until we test it," she said, "but we must be careful. If this is truly meant to help, we need to use it wisely." The group fell silent, watching the orb as it hovered peacefully. Kalis felt torn between hope and fear. The humans' gifts were changing their world in ways no one could have imagined, but at what cost? Every step forward seemed to pull them closer to something they couldn't yet understand. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the plateau grew warmer, the air filled with the sweet scent of the new plants. Kalis glanced back at the fleet above, still silent and unmoving. He wondered how long the humans would wait before coming again. Would they always bring gifts, or would they eventually ask for something in return? Nira closed the box gently, sealing the orb inside. "We'll keep this safe," she said firmly, "and we'll study it. But we won't let it change who we are. Whatever happens next, we face it together." The others nodded, their glowing patterns steadying as they took strength from her words. Kalis felt a flicker of hope amid the tension. They had faced challenges before, and they had survived. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to navigate this strange new path without losing themselves. As the day stretched on, the group returned to their tasks, tending to the plants and exploring the changes spreading across the plateau. Kalis stayed close to Nira, his thoughts heavy but focused. Whatever the future held, he knew one thing for certain. The humans had brought change, and change was never easy. But it was also an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to protect what mattered most. The days passed slowly on the plateau, each one bringing subtle changes to the landscape. The glowing plants continued to spread, their roots weaving through the rocky soil and transforming it into rich, fertile ground. Strange insects buzzed around them, their wings catching the light like shards of glass. The Valorans worked tirelessly to understand the new world growing around them, but their thoughts often drifted back to the humans and the mysterious orb locked safely inside the glowing box. Kalis spent most of his time near the edge of the plateau, watching the fleet above. It never moved, a silent sentinel hanging in the sky, like a question waiting to be answered. He couldn't shake the feeling that the humans were observing them, studying their every move. Were they pleased with what they saw, or were they waiting for the right moment to act? Nira kept the group focused, dividing their time between tending to the plants and examining the orb. She had placed it in the center of their camp, where everyone could see it. The golden light it emitted was warm and comforting, but its steady pulse reminded them of its unknown purpose. No one dared touch it again, not until they understood more about what it truly was. One evening, as the twin moons rose high in the sky, Kalis joined Nira near the orb. Her glowing patterns shimmered softly in the dim light, reflecting her calm but cautious demeanor. "Do you think it's alive?" he asked quietly, breaking the silence. Nira tilted her head, studying the orb closely. "I don't know," she admitted. "It feels different, like it has a mind of its own." Kalis frowned. "What if it's watching us too? What if it's how the humans are keeping track of us?" Nira didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and placed her hand gently on the orb's surface. It pulsed slightly faster under her touch, as if responding to her presence. She pulled her hand back quickly, her glowing patterns flaring briefly. "Maybe," she said finally, "but we can't let fear guide us. If we destroy it or push it away, we might lose something important." Tarek approached, his weapon slung over his shoulder. His glowing patterns were sharp and restless, betraying his frustration. "Important," he snapped. "How can we trust anything they give us? For all we know, this thing could be dangerous." "It might be," Nira agreed. "But so is ignorance. We need to learn as much as we can before we make any decisions." Kalis looked at the orb, its golden light casting long shadows on the ground. He wanted to believe Nira, to trust that the humans' intentions were good. But every gift they brought felt like another thread tying the Valorans to something they didn't fully understand. What would happen if those threads tightened? Would they still have a choice? As the night deepened, the group gathered around the fire, their glowing patterns creating a protective circle against the darkness. Nira spoke softly, her voice carrying over the crackling flames. "We've faced challenges before," she said, "and we've always found a way to survive. This is no different. We'll take it step by step, learning as we go." Kalis nodded, though his heart remained heavy. He glanced at the orb, its steady pulse matching the rhythm of his breathing. Whatever it was, a gift, a tool, or something else entirely, it was changing everything. And as the fire burned low and the stars stretched endlessly above, Kalis realized that the hardest part wasn't knowing what to do next. It was trusting themselves to make the right choice when the time came. The next morning brought a strange shift in the air. The plateau felt different, quieter, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The glowing plants swayed gently, their light dimmer than usual, and the insects that had become a part of the landscape seemed to have vanished. Kalis noticed it immediately as he stepped out of his shelter. Something wasn't right. Nira stood near the orb, her glowing patterns flickering nervously. She had been watching it all night, unable to sleep. The orb's pulse had changed. It was no longer steady but erratic, like a heartbeat racing out of control. "It's reacting to something," she said when Kalis approached. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that betrayed her unease. Kalis frowned, staring at the orb. Its golden light now pulsed so quickly it almost hurt to look at. "Do you think it's broken?" he asked. "I don't know," Nira admitted, "but I think it's connected to the humans. Maybe they're trying to send us a message." Before Kalis could respond, a deep rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. The group scrambled to their feet, looking toward the sky. The fleet of human ships, which had remained motionless for days, was now descending slowly, their lights brighter and more intense than before. Dust swirled around the plateau as one of the ships landed not far from where the Valorans stood. Tarek raised his weapon, his glowing patterns flaring brightly. "They're back," he growled. "I knew they'd come for it." "Wait," Nira said sharply, stepping forward. "We don't know why they're here yet. Let's hear them out." A group of humans emerged from the ship, their suits gleaming under the pale light of the twin moons. One of them stepped forward, its helmet retracted to reveal a face that was both familiar and alien. It gestured toward the orb, then pointed to the sky. "Danger," it said, its voice distorted but clear. "Must take." Kalis's heart sank. "Take what?" he demanded, stepping closer. "What danger?" The human pointed to the orb again. "Not safe here. Must go with us." Nera's glowing patterns dimmed slightly as she processed the words. "Why isn't it safe?" she asked. "What do you know that we don't?" The human hesitated, then touched its chest. "Energy. Unstable. Could harm your world." The group fell silent, the weight of the words sinking in. The orb, the gift they had trusted, the thing they had guarded so carefully, wasn't just a tool or a symbol of peace. It was dangerous, and now the humans wanted to take it away. Tarek stepped forward, his weapon aimed at the humans. "You gave it to us," he shouted. "Now you want to take it back. How do we know this isn't a trick?" The human raised its hands, palm open. "No trick," it said. "Only truth. Harm will come if it stays." Kalis looked at the orb, its frantic pulsing growing even faster. He felt torn. If the humans were telling the truth, keeping the orb could destroy everything they had worked to protect. But if they handed it over, they might lose their chance to understand it, or worse, give the humans too much power over them. Nira stepped between the humans and Tarek, her glowing patterns steadying. "We need time," she said firmly. "Time to decide." The human nodded slowly. "Little time," it warned. "Not long." As the humans retreated back into their ship, the group gathered around the orb, their glowing patterns flickering with tension. Kalis clenched his fists, his mind racing. "What do we do?" he asked quietly. "If we keep it, we risk our world. If we give it up, we risk losing ourselves." Nira placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression resolute. "We decide together," she said. "Whatever happens, we face it as one." The orb pulsed wildly, its light casting long shadows across the plateau. Above them, the fleet loomed silently, waiting. The choice was theirs, but the consequences would belong to everyone.